Hi, I'm Katie Roof with TechCrunch. And Dennis here, his wife's about to have a baby any moment now. So if he runs off stage, it's not because I'm asking a tough question. It's a legitimate reason.
I put my phone right here where I can see it just in case.
Okay. All right, I understand. I guess that's kind of a big deal. And then we have Jeff here, the incoming, or the new CEO. And so Foursquare has changed a lot over the years. You started out as a location sharing app, and now you have two apps, a Yelp competitor, and then Swarm for check-ins. And you're also a data company now, and we'll get to all that. But I wanted to talk to you about your new roles. So as executive chairman, I wanted to find out, are you still involved with the day-to-day, or how are things different than before?
Yeah, I'm still day-to-day at the company. I'm there 5 days a week. There's tons of things that are going on in Foursquare, both on the consumer side and the business and the enterprise side. And I'm still there trying to make sure that we get to focus on the things that represent the reasons that we started the company. And so a big reason for the role switch is as Foursquare matures and starts to turn into the amazing business that we knew it would become, Jeff is an extremely talented business leader, and he's the one that's now running the day-to-day operations and making sure that we're staying true to our goals and achieving our objectives.
And so how will Foursquare differ under your leadership?
Well, Dennis and I have been partnering for almost 2 years now. I joined a little more than 18 months ago, and we started taking these amazing consumer apps and trying to make them better and bring back the magic. But we also had set a goal to be a $100 million profitable business in the next couple of years, and we see the direct path to that. And so part of it was earning our way in the world by figuring out how we create a sustainable business so we can keep investing in these great consumer products and keep innovating. And so we've built, in the last 2 years, we've built enterprise and media products that last year grew 160% in revenue. And so now they're the majority of revenue of the company. So we all come to work every day thinking about how to guide people to that next great, burrito place that they would never discovered, or that incredible artisan ice cream place that has the salted caramel inside the cupcake. That's what gets us up every morning. But we also know we have investors, and we just raised $45 million with Morgan Stanley, Andreessen Horowitz, Union Square Ventures, and others. We have an obligation to be here for the next 20 years inventing these things. So that kind of balance is a hallmark of what Dennis and I have been cooperating on over the last 20 months, which is to build a really sustainable, successful business, and also get to keep inventing the future of how mobile changes the real world and your ability to discover the real world or play a game in the real world.
You've found some interesting use cases for data. It turns out if people tell you where they're going and everywhere they eat at and shop at, you know a lot about them. And so you accurately predicted the decline in sales at Chipotle because of the E. coli scare. You've also found out about iPhone sales ahead of time. How are you monetizing this, and what are you using this data for exactly?
Yeah, so we have a whole suite of analytics products. We power developers with our map of the world, and we also have analytics products we call Place Insights. So when we predicted how many iPhones Apple would sell based on foot traffic to Apple stores, or we predicted that McDonald's would have an enormous quarter finally based on the all-day breakfast data, we're seeing the foot traffic of the world. We called Chipotle would have 30% year-over-year decline in sales, and it was 29.7 when the final numbers came out. So we're helping all kinds of people understand what's happening in the real world. I mean, it's easy because all of us work in tech to forget that 93% of all consumer spending happens in the real world. E-commerce is about 7%, and there isn't a cookie in the real world. So we have this chance to not only build great consumer products, but also kind of be the Nielsen of the real world and understand. And so we're building really sophisticated analytics products based on that. We have this foot traffic panel of millions and millions of people and growing around the world that, while we protect everyone's privacy, we're at the aggregate level kind of able to see cultural trends, and we're able to see how traffic changes. We're a bunch of academics in the UK actually were using Foursquare data recently to predict which neighborhoods would gentrify, which, as we're here in Brooklyn, it's awesome to be thinking about how neighborhoods change. So all of these cultural trends of the real world, we're able to capture, and that's, if you can't figure out how to build a profitable business with that insight into 120 countries, then you should go home, but we know we can.
Is this data from where people are voluntarily checking in, or is it from the background? I'm sure some people are wondering how their data is being used.
Want to talk about Pilgrim?
Yeah, sure. So, I was going to correct you earlier because it's not just data from people that are checking in. One of the things that we're really proud about that we've built over the last 4 or 5 years is this technology called Pilgrim. And it's a piece of code that you can put on a device, and depending on where the device is and understanding the signals, we can start to figure out exactly where it is and where it's been. And so that's that piece of technology is what's powering all the intelligence within Foursquare. Like, how do we learn about the places that you've been to so we can make smarter recommendations? That piece of technology makes it so whenever you go to check in on Swarm, we know exactly the place that you're in. Also for the 100,000 developers that are also building on top of Foursquare, that we're able to give them this this ability to basically snap to place all the time. And running these services in the background is really what's powering this tremendous source of data, which Jeff is talking about, that's feeding all of our analytics tools. So it's much more than just, hey, I have to press the button in order to understand that. Like, a big part of our value proposition to partners and advertisers and the developers that we work with is that we built this technology that allows people to understand this in the background.
And I would just add, for those who are trying to understand how big Foursquare is becoming in our ambition, you don't have to be a Foursquare user per se for us to understand. We have a network of hundreds of thousands of apps now, and because of our understanding of the shape of 105 million places we've crowdsourced around the world, if an advertiser like Nike wants to find 18 million Americans who work out 3 times a week or go running every morning and reach to them, we can enable that, both Foursquare users and non-Foursquare users, through our sort of pinpoint partnerships. So, and if Burger King wants to figure out people who happen to be addicted to Shake Shack and McDonald's and offer them a deal across thousands of apps, we can enable that, and we can even measure whether the ads work. So, thanks to Pilgrim and thanks to our sort of crowdsourced shapes of the world, our media business, which is the biggest line, is growing like crazy. We have 1/3 of the Fortune 500 consumer brands now buying advertising on digital and online through Foursquare.
And so with all this new revenue, are you profitable yet?
When we raised $45 million in January, we set a goal to be a profitable $100 million business in the next few years. And so we've got a plan. We're very focused on that every day, and we know how we'll get there.
And you recently raised some funding, as we reported, and it's a tough fundraising environment right now, but we understand that it was significantly lower valuation than in previous rounds in the past. Why is that?
I think the business previously was valued on this idea that the Foursquare app would grow up and be a Facebook, a Twitter, a Snapchat. And I think what we started realizing a couple years ago is that wasn't the destiny for the apps. Like, the destiny was to make these things that we have tens of millions of people that love, but we actually don't need 100 million, 300 million people to be using them every day in order to make a profitable business. And so when we went back and we started talking to investors about, well, what is this business? What is the business? How is it evolving? What's it going to look like 2 years from now? Really what Jeff and I have been working on with the rest of the Foursquare team has been, how can we build these amazing consumer apps that we know throw off tons of data and interesting insights about what's going on in the real world? And then how can we monetize that data through relationships with developers and enterprises and advertisers? And that's been working out fantastically well for us. As part of that process, we had to go and do a little bit of a reset on the expectation evaluation, but I feel like we're in a really good spot now.
Yeah, we were able to think about the business the way you think about a public company, and we're real revenue, real business now, growing fast, and so we were able to evaluate it. And before, it was kind of valued on this early hype, and so I think we feel really comfortable. And smart investors like Morgan Stanley and others putting, Union Square Ventures, Andreessen and others, they see they won't invest unless they can triple to 10x their money, and so they all are voting with their feet, and it's a testament to the success over the last 20 months of the business growing. And it's hard in this environment, and I know a lot of startups out there, and unless you're showing real traction and you have enormous potential, you're not able to raise big round in these terms. So we're really proud of the team and how far we've come.
What are you planning to do with the new funding? I understand you might expand to Asia. You have some announcements there.
Yeah, well, something to note is thanks to the funding, we've actually hired 35 people year to date, both here in New York and in San Francisco. So for the representative of the city. We continue to be a made in New York company, and we're headquartered here in Soho, but we added 35 people. We're adding people from top companies like Apple and Accenture and ThinkNear and Radium One and others. And we also hired a head of Asian BD, and we're opening offices in Asia. Jeremy Geiger, who is CEO of Retailligence, is coming over to run Asian BD for us. We have a ton of customers in Asia, folks that have built up over the last few years. Tencent is a customer, Samsung is a customer, Grab Taxi is a customer. So Jeremy will be going back and forth between Singapore and Shanghai, building up our partner network. And so the $45 million we raised in January is letting us staff up in engineering, particularly in enterprise and media sales, so we can get the word out and keep growing at the pace we've been growing.
So
also worth noting that we are continuing to hire, and so if you are interested, foursquare.com/jobs, come check it out. It's a great place to work.
Look at that. Come to Disrupt and get a job. And so you're expanding to Asia. Does Foursquare do well in Asia from a consumer perspective? What regions are people using Swarm and Foursquare in?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen growth really all over the world, and it's been, we've been doing this, 7 years now? So you see different pockets light up at different times. Latin America, Brazil, Russia, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia have all been, extremely great, very big, very quickly growing for us. And so, it's funny because I think a lot of companies focus on just the US, and really a big chunk of what's happening that's really interesting in the technology and the business side is happening outside of the US for us. And so we're just starting to think about, in the next couple of years, how do we put that to work for us?
Yeah, I mean, like a Twitter or Facebook or lots of other companies, and the internet's global. Mobile phones are the internet outside the US for the most part in many parts of the world. And so, we have users in over 110 countries. Like Dennis mentioned, some of those bigger countries like Turkey and Mexico and Russia and Japan and Korea and others. But a lot of what we're aiming to do is, find those passionate explorers who love mapping the world and discovering new places or playing the Swarm game and becoming mayor. And if we can just get a few % of every society in the world to participate in our crowdsourcing model, then, a Samsung or a WeChat or others are using all the mapping technology that we provide. The way Twitter does. I mean, Twitter in scores of countries now is, you tweet and you tag that tweet, and that's powered by Foursquare. If you tag a pin on Pinterest to a specific place in Red Hook, you're using Foursquare data and technology to identify where that photo was taken and snap it. So we're doing those kinds of services for a bunch of Asian developers like Samsung and Tencent, WeChat, and others. And that's what Jeremy is really going to be focused on, is the enterprise uses of this global technology footprint.
And when it comes to consumers, what do you think users are using Foursquare for these days? I know there were mayors, and then there weren't mayors, and other mayors again. Are you emphasizing the games again?
Well, I mean, each app has its own, kind of different personality, right? And I think what we've realized is that, when we make Swarm the fastest and easiest way to check in for, just so it's something fun to do during the day, earning coins and earning mayorships, as well as a life logging tool. I mean, people love that. It's got this quirky personality, and we're seeing, fantastic traction there. I think we're at 9 billion check-ins overall, and 8 million check-ins every single day. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of data that the company can really put to work. On the Foursquare side of things, it's the same story since the beginning. It's like, how do we lead people to amazing experiences? And how do we do that whether they're actively in the app searching for something, or if they're just walking around, can we ping them and have them, have their phone buzz in their pocket, and they open their phone and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to go to this place right across the street because Foursquare told me to do that. And so I think we're really best of breed at building a lot of those types of services. And the Foursquare and Swarm teams just continue to do that.
And you mentioned that there have been 9 billion check-ins on Swarm, and that I understand that there's 50 million active users today on,
right.
And that's both Foursquare apps combined. Is that correct?
And the website.
Yeah. And so, to be honest, I was surprised when I heard those numbers, because you may have heard this, that a lot of people say that after you split the apps, that some people didn't switch over to the new app. Mm-hmm. Was that the right decision in hindsight? Would you have done anything differently, or was that the right direction? I
think splitting the apps was definitely the right decision. Like, the app was getting kind of complicated and bloated, and we have 2 stories, and now we have 2 stories for 2 apps. It works really, really well. I think the only thing that we would do differently is I think we did a lousy job kind of messaging it to people, explaining our thinking, and this app is for this, and this app is for this. So if I had to do over, maybe we would do a little bit better job on the messaging. But you know what, that was 18 months ago, and maybe longer than that. If you look at a lot of the numbers, specifically from the data that we're collecting and how satisfied the users seem to be, all those things have rebounded. And so we're really excited about the position that we're in right now.
Yeah, I would just add, last year, we really focused on bringing the magic back to Swarm, some of the magic that made the original Foursquare game so compelling. And in the US, we tripled the check-ins per user last year. And some of it was going back, bringing back mayorships, bringing back the coins. But the team had so much fun dialing up the quirky nature of it. And so now you have the triple X stickers, and if you visit enough coffee shops or artisan cocktail bars, there's all kinds of little games you'll see us continue to dial up this year. But we're at all-time high global daily check-ins, and so we're thrilled at that growth. But there was definitely a dip during the split. I arrived just as the split was already being implemented, so I can't say I was there for it. But I understand now deeply, as we talk to consumers, the value of a city guy that gets to know you and pings you when you're in a new neighborhood or you sit down at a new restaurant. But doesn't have to be a game. It can just be a great guide for explorers versus people who really want to have this sort of social game experience out in the real world and be inspired to try new places and share location that Swarm is. And so they each have deepened their experience either as a game that you play in the real world or as a city guide. And so that it's ultimately now both are growing, but it did take a hit for a while.
So there was an initial user decline, but you're increasing engagement these days. I saw you have some cool partnerships on Foursquare. You can deliver on delivery.com. You can get food and also alcohol, but there's so many different delivery businesses already. Why would people go to Foursquare beyond the others out there?
Well, I think we have a bunch of partnerships like Uber and others.
OpenTable.
And OpenTable. OpenTable's been true for a while. I think it was less that we thought people would join the app, other than those companies came to us and wanted access to the loyal Foursquare users, and we wanted to make it more convenient for them. And so I don't think that's like a huge growth area for us. It's more like we're constantly thinking about how to make the apps more useful. And OpenTable is a great partner, but it's very hard to search for a restaurant on OpenTable, personally, I find. But if you have all the recommendations from Foursquare, which knows you, knows the places you love to go, knows my wife likes organic farm to table, learns that my in-laws love steak and potatoes, and it tailors where they go, when they go to pick a restaurant, then it's just all that more convenient to then book it through OpenTable. Sure. But OpenTable doesn't guide them very well to where they should discover.
I have so much more I want to ask, but just one last question. Future of Foursquare, could you be acquired someday? Possible?
Well, I mean, a big part of what we did with this financing is to get the company on this road where we can be a big, strong, independent company. And that's starting to happen, especially with all the leadership changes, all the brand new people that we're bringing in. Like, we found a business that works. It works really, really well. Consumer apps are doing really well. Everyone at the company is really excited about building this stuff. If we're back up here in a couple months, there's always opportunities where people are like, well, would you actually go and work with this other company? And we have those conversations from time to time, but a big part of raising the financing is like, hey, let's go and let's make this business work. And that's what we set out to do.
All right, well, good luck on your new roles, and congrats on being an almost father.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us here at Disrupt.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Katie.